Have you ever replayed a single text message so many times that the words stopped making sense? You read it once, twice, 10 times, looking for a hidden meaning that might not even be there. You look at how fast he replied or how slow. You look at the punctuation. You look at whether he used one exclamation mark or none at all. You zoom in on a single word like it's a clue in a case file, turning it over, holding it up to the light, asking it questions it was never designed to answer. And somewhere in that exhausting loop, a question keeps whispering underneath everything else. Does he actually like me? Or am I just imagining something that isn't real? If you are watching this right now because that question has been living rent-free in your mind, I want you to know something before we go any further. You are not overthinking because you're broken. You are overthinking because you care. And caring without certainty is one of the most uncomfortable places a human being can stand. Somewhere between hope and doubt. Your mind keeps building a case and then tearing it down and then building it again. But by the end of this video, you are going to know exactly what to look for. Not guesses, not hopeful wishing, real, observable signs that tell you the truth, even when his words don't. So stay with me, because sign number 3 is the one almost nobody talks about. And it might be the one already happening in your life right now without you even realizing it. Let's talk about the pain for a moment, because I think it deserves to be named before we solve it. You know that feeling when you're lying in bed at night and your mind just won't let the day end? You're replaying a conversation from 3 days ago. He said something that felt warm, almost tender. And then the very next day, he felt distant, like a door quietly closing. And you start asking yourself, was I imagining the warmth or am I imagining the distance? Which version of him is real? This is the exhausting part of liking someone before you know where you stand. It's not just butterflies, it's detective work. You start analyzing everything. The way he looked at you across the room, the way he laughed a little too long at your joke, the way he remembered something you mentioned once, weeks ago, almost like it mattered to him. And then, just as quickly, doubt creeps back in. Maybe he's just a nice person. Maybe he treats everyone this way. Maybe I'm reading a novel out of a single sentence. This confusion doesn't just live in your head. It lives in your body. It's the tightness in your chest when your phone buzzes and it isn't him. It's the way your stomach drops when you see him talking to someone else and laughing the exact same way he laughs with you. It's the sinking feeling of wondering if you're the only one keeping score. Some nights you feel almost certain. Other nights you feel foolish for ever thinking it in the first place. And that back and forth, that emotional whiplash, is its own kind of tired. It's a tiredness that doesn't come from doing too much. It comes from feeling too much without anywhere to put it. Maybe you've caught yourself checking his social media a little too often. Not because you're obsessive, but because you're starving for a clue, any clue that might settle the question once and for all. Maybe you've told your friends the same story 5 different times, hoping that if you say it out loud enough, someone will finally tell you what it means. And maybe, quietly, you've started to wonder if wanting an answer this badly makes you seem needy, or too much, or somehow less desirable. It doesn't. Wanting clarity isn't weakness. It's one of the most human things there is. Here's something important. This isn't weakness. This is what happens when the human heart is asked to wait in uncertainty. Uncertainty is one of the most psychologically taxing states we can experience. More taxing in some studies than actual rejection. Because rejection, painful as it is, gives you an answer. Uncertainty gives you nothing but a loop, a hallway with no doors. A question that keeps echoing without ever finding a wall to land on. And so many people spend months, Sometimes years stuck in that loop, waiting for a text to mean something, waiting for a moment of eye contact to confirm what their gut has been telling them all along, waiting for him to say the words. When the truth is, most people never say the words first. They show you. Maybe you've even started doing the quiet math in your head, comparing how he treats you to how he treats other people. You watch how he talks to his co-workers, his friends, strangers in line at a coffee shop, just trying to figure out if the way he looks at you is actually different, or if you've simply convinced yourself it is because you wanted it to be true. That comparison game is exhausting, and it rarely gives you a clean answer, because you're measuring feelings using a ruler that was never designed to measure them. And underneath all of it, there's usually a quieter fear. Not just, does he like me? But am I allowed to want this? Maybe you've been hurt before by someone who said all the right things and meant none of them. Maybe you've learned the hard way that words can be a performance, a costume someone puts on to get what they want, and then quietly takes off once they've gotten it. So now, even when someone seems interested, some part of you flinches, waiting for the moment the mask comes off. That caution isn't paranoia. It's a nervous system trying to protect you from being fooled again. But it also means you need something sturdier than words to lean on. You need proof that doesn't wear a costume. Which brings us to the truth that changes everything. Here it is. The biggest reframe of this entire video. So listen closely, because once you understand this, you'll never look at does he like me the same way again. Words are cheap. Attention is expensive. Anyone can say something kind. Anyone can send a sweet message when they're bored or lonely or a little bit tipsy at 11 at night. Words cost nothing to produce, and even less to forget. A person can type "I miss you" in 4 seconds without feeling a single ounce of what those words are supposed to mean. But attention, real attention, the kind that costs someone their time, their energy, their mental bandwidth in a life that is already full of 100 other things pulling at them, that is not cheap. That is the currency of genuine interest. So the question isn't, what has he said to me? The question is, what has he done with his attention when he didn't have to? Because a man who likes you doesn't need to announce it with a speech. He reveals it in the small, boring, unglamorous choices he makes when no one is grading him on it. He reveals it in a Tuesday afternoon, not just a Friday night, in an ordinary moment, not a performed one. Let's talk about Sarah for a second, because her story might feel painfully familiar. Sarah met a man named Daniel through mutual friends. He was funny, a little guarded, the kind of person who didn't say much about his feelings. For weeks, Sarah drove herself half crazy trying to decode him. He'd text back within minutes some days, and then go quiet for 2 full days the next week. She thought, he must not be that into me. But then she noticed something she almost dismissed as nothing. Daniel started making time for her, even on days packed with obligations. He had a demanding job, a tight schedule, and a group of friends who constantly wanted his attention. But somehow, he always found 30 minutes for her. Not because she asked, because he chose to. This is sign number 1, and it is the foundation everything else builds on. He makes time for you, even when it's inconvenient. Here's the psychology behind it. Time is the one resource none of us can create more of. You can earn more money, you can build more energy, but you cannot manufacture more hours in a day. So when someone consistently carves out time for you, especially time that costs them something, whether it's sleep or rest or plans with friends, that is not an accident. That is a decision. And decisions reveal priorities far more honestly than words ever could. Think of it like a garden. Anyone can admire a garden from a distance and say it's beautiful, but the person who actually shows up, who waters it even when they're tired, who pulls the weeds even when no one's watching, that person is invested. Attention that costs nothing is admiration. Attention that costs something is investment. And investment is what you're looking for. There's another way to see this too. Imagine someone's week as a jar, and every commitment they have is a stone dropped into that jar. Work, friends, family, hobbies, rest. The jar fills quickly, and most people don't have much room left over. If he keeps making space for you inside a jar that's already full of stones, it means he's actively choosing to move other things aside. That's not something people do for someone they're indifferent to. That's something people do only for someone who has quietly become a priority. Here's a line worth remembering. Interest is loud in words, but quiet in actions. And it's the quiet you should trust the most. There's a second layer to this sign that's worth mentioning because it's easy to miss. It's not just that he makes time for you, it's how he makes that time feel. There's a difference between someone who checks their watch every 10 minutes while you talk, half present, half somewhere else, and someone who actually settles into the moment with you. Phone face down, attention fully in the room. Sarah noticed this with Daniel too. When they were together, even during a rushed lunch break between his meetings, he wasn't glancing at his phone every few minutes or mentally halfway out the door. He was there, fully, like the 30 minutes he'd carved out were the most important 30 minutes of his day. That kind of presence cannot be faked for long. People who are only mildly interested tend to multitask their way through time with you. People who are genuinely drawn to you tend to protect that time like it's something rare. Now let's move to the second sign, and this one is subtle, almost invisible if you're not paying attention, but once you see it, you'll notice it everywhere. He remembers the small things, not the big obvious things like your birthday or where you work. Those are easy to remember because everyone remembers those. I'm talking about the throwaway details, the name of your childhood dog that you mentioned once in passing, the fact that you don't like cilantro, the story about your grandmother's recipe that you told him weeks ago and never brought up again. There was a woman named Emma who dated someone for a few months who never remembered anything she said. Every conversation felt like starting from zero. She'd mentioned something important to her, and a week later, it was gone, like it had never been said. It made her feel invisible, like she was talking into a void, like her words were falling into water and disappearing without a ripple. Then she met someone else, a man named Marcus, and one afternoon, weeks into knowing him, he brought up something she had mentioned in passing on their very first conversation. A small detail about her love for a certain kind of tea. He remembered it, and he brought her that exact tea without making a big deal out of it. He didn't announce it like a grand gesture. He just set it down in front of her like it was the most natural thing in the world. That's the sign. Not the tea itself, the memory behind it. Here's why this matters psychologically. Human memory is selective. Our brains cannot hold on to everything we hear, so we naturally prioritize information that feels emotionally significant to us. If someone remembers the small details of your life, it's because a part of their brain flagged you as important enough to store. You didn't ask them to remember. Their mind did it automatically because you mattered enough to make the cut. Think of memory like a mental filing cabinet. Most information gets glanced at and thrown away, but some information gets filed carefully, labeled, kept. If he's keeping your details filed away, it's because somewhere inside him he's already decided you're worth holding on to. And here's the part that's easy to miss. He's probably not even trying. He's not sitting there memorizing facts about you like flashcards before a test. It's happening naturally, effortlessly, because attention flows toward what the heart already cares about. Here's a quote worth pausing on. People don't remember what doesn't matter to them. If he remembers you, it's because you already do. Now, sign number 3, and this is the one I promised you earlier, the one almost nobody talks about. He gets nervous around you, even after he's comfortable with you in every other part of his life. This one confuses a lot of people because we've been taught that confidence equals interest. We think if a man really likes us, he'll be smooth, composed, always saying the right thing. But real attraction doesn't always look like confidence. Sometimes it looks like a stumble, a pause, a moment where he forgets what he was about to say because you smiled at him a certain way. There was a man named James, incredibly confident in his career, comfortable speaking in front of large rooms, completely at ease in almost every social situation. But around a woman named Claire, he would fumble his words, laugh a little too nervously, sometimes forget simple sentences mid-thought. His friends noticed it before Claire did. They called it out, half joking, saying they had never seen him like that with anyone else. One of his closest friends even pulled him aside and said, "You just introduced yourself to her like you've never met her before, and you two have known each other for months." That nervousness wasn't weakness, it was data. It told you something his words never could. Around you, something in him shifts. The emotional stakes feel higher. And when the stakes feel higher, the nervous system responds, even in people who are usually calm and composed everywhere else. Here's the analogy. Think about the difference between walking on flat, familiar ground and standing at the edge of a mountain. On flat ground, you're relaxed. Your footing is easy. But at the edge of something high, something meaningful, your body responds differently. Your heart rate changes. Your senses sharpen. Your palms might even sweat a little. That's not because the mountain is dangerous. It's because it matters. It's because some part of you knows that this view, this moment, is worth paying attention to. If he's nervous around you in a way he isn't with other people, it's because being near you feels like standing at the edge of something that matters to him. Here's a line to remember. Confidence is easy around people who don't matter. Nervousness is the tax we pay for caring. It's worth noting that this nervousness doesn't always look dramatic. Sometimes it's as small as a slightly longer pause before answering a simple question you asked. Sometimes it's the way he suddenly becomes a little more careful with his words, choosing them slower than he normally would. Almost like he's aware that what he says to you carries more weight than what he says to anyone else. Claire noticed that James, who could debate anyone confidently on almost any topic, would suddenly go quiet and thoughtful when she asked him something personal, choosing his words like they mattered more coming out of his mouth toward her than they did toward the rest of the world. That kind of care, even when it looks like hesitation, is rarely a sign of disinterest. More often, it's a sign that he's trying to get it right, because getting it right with you feels important. Let's move to sign number 4, because this one often gets overlooked entirely, and it's one of the most telling signs of all. He includes you in his future, even in small, casual ways. This doesn't mean he's planning a wedding in his head. It's much smaller and much more revealing than that. It's the offhand comment like, "You'd love this place, we should go sometime." It's him mentioning an event 3 weeks away and casually saying, "You should come." It's the way his sentences start to include the word "we" when talking about things that haven't happened yet. There was a story about a woman named Priya who kept telling her friends she didn't know where she stood with a man she'd been seeing casually for 2 months. Then one day, almost by accident, she noticed he had mentioned her in 3 separate conversations about upcoming plans, none of which she had asked to be part of. A concert 2 months away, a friend's barbecue next month, a weekend trip he was already thinking about for the summer. Every single time, her name came up as part of the plan without her prompting it. Her friend later told her, half laughing, "He's already planned your next 6 weekends, and he doesn't even know it." That's not an accident. Our brains don't casually insert people into imagined futures unless some part of us has already decided we want them there. Including someone in future plans, even small and casual ones, is the mind quietly rehearsing a future it hopes will happen. Think of it like building a house. No one puts a room into the blueprint for someone they don't expect to stay. If you keep appearing in his blueprint, even in the smallest rooms, it's because he's already imagining a version of the future with you in it. Maybe it's not the master bedroom yet. Maybe it's just a small window, a hallway, a corner of the kitchen, but he's building with you in mind, and that's worth noticing. Here's a quote worth sitting with. The future is where the heart makes its plans before the mouth ever catches up. And now, sign number 5, the one that matters more than almost anything else on this list, because it reveals character, not just interest. He shows up for you in your low moments, not just your good ones. Anyone can enjoy your company when you're fun, easygoing, laughing, full of energy. That's the easy part of being around someone. The real test of whether someone genuinely cares is what they do when you're not at your best, when you're stressed, tired, anxious, or going through something difficult. There was a man named Tariq who dated a woman going through an incredibly difficult time at work. Stress piling up, sleepless nights, short temper, low energy. Most people would have quietly pulled away during a season like that. Instead, he leaned in. He checked on her more, not less. He didn't need her to be entertaining. He didn't need her to perform happiness for him. He simply showed up, patiently, consistently, through the hard weeks without complaint. He'd bring her food she didn't ask for. He'd sit quietly with her when she didn't have the energy to talk. He never once made her feel like her struggle was inconvenient to him. That is the difference between someone who likes the idea of you and someone who genuinely cares about you as a person. Anyone can love a sunny day. It takes something different to stand beside someone through a storm and not walk away. Think of the difference between a fair weather friend and someone who hands you an umbrella before the rain even starts. If he's still there on your hardest days, not performing, not pulling away, just present, that's not convenience. That's character. And character is the truest form of affection there is. Here's a line worth remembering. Anyone can enjoy your sunshine. The one who stays through your storm is the one who's actually falling for you. There's something else worth noticing here too. Pay attention to how he behaves, not just when you're struggling, but when you're irritated or short with him, or simply not at your most charming. Anyone can be patient with a good mood. It takes something different to be patient with a bad one. If he stays calm and kind, even when you're not bringing your best self to the table, that patience isn't weakness or passivity. It's a quiet form of commitment, a decision to keep showing up for the whole of you, not just the curated highlight reel version of you that's easy to love. Now that you know these 5 signs, let's talk about what to actually do with this information, because knowing the signs means nothing if you don't know how to use them. First, stop treating every text message like a puzzle that needs solving. The moment you catch yourself analyzing punctuation or response time, gently redirect your attention to the bigger picture. Zoom out. Look at patterns over weeks, not moments over minutes. One slow reply means nothing. A consistent pattern over a month means everything. Give yourself permission to close the group chat conversation about what does this text mean, and instead ask a much simpler question. What has he actually done for me this week? Second, start noticing actions with the same intensity you've been noticing words. If you've spent hours reading into a single sentence, spend that same energy tracking whether he's making time for you, remembering your details, showing up in both your good moments and your hard ones. Let the evidence speak louder than your anxiety. You might even try this quietly in your own mind, almost like keeping a private mental scoreboard, not to manipulate the situation, but simply to ground yourself in reality instead of speculation. Third, and this one is important, Stop performing for approval. If you find yourself constantly trying to be more exciting, more agreeable, more available, just to earn his interest, pause. The right kind of interest doesn't require you to audition for it. It shows up because of who you already are, not because of who you're pretending to be. The moment you start shrinking or exaggerating yourself to be chosen, you've already left the version of yourself he was actually drawn to in the first place. Fourth, give yourself permission to ask directly when the pattern feels unclear. You don't have to live in ambiguity forever. A simple, honest conversation, asked calmly and without pressure, can save you months of overthinking. Clarity is always kinder than uncertainty, even when the answer isn't what you hoped for. There is a strange kind of peace that comes from simply knowing, even when the knowing is hard, because at least you're no longer standing in the fog. Fifth, learn to separate the signs from the story you're tempted to build around them. It's easy, once you know what to look for, to start seeing these 5 signs everywhere, even where they're faint or inconsistent, simply because you want so badly for the answer to be yes. Be honest with yourself about the difference between a pattern that shows up consistently over time and a single moment you're stretching to mean more than it does. 1 remembered detail is nice. 5 remembered details across 5 different conversations is a pattern. 1 thoughtful gesture during a good week is kind. Consistent thoughtfulness across both good weeks and hard weeks is character. Let the weight of your conclusion match the weight of the evidence. 6th, notice how you feel in his presence over time, not just in the exciting first moments. Attraction in the beginning can create a kind of fog that makes almost anyone feel magnetic. But ask yourself, as the weeks go on, do you feel more like yourself around him or less? Genuine interest from the right person tends to make you feel calmer, safer, more like your own personality rather than a nervous, edited version of it. If the signs are present, but you still feel like you're shrinking, walking on eggshells, or constantly managing his moods, that's worth paying attention to as well. Because compatibility isn't only about whether he likes you. It's also about whether the version of you that exists around him is one you actually want to keep being. And finally, protect your own peace while you wait for clarity. Don't put your entire emotional world on pause for someone else's timeline. Keep living your life. Keep growing. Keep showing up for yourself, because the healthiest version of you is the version that isn't waiting by the phone, but living fully regardless of the outcome. Someone who is truly interested in you will find a way to keep up with the life you're building. You should never have to shrink your life down to the size of someone else's hesitation. Here's what I want you to walk away with today. You don't need to guess anymore. You don't need to lie awake decoding a text message at midnight. You now know what real interest actually looks like. It looks like time given freely. It looks like memory that wasn't forced. It looks like nervous hands and quiet stumbles. It looks like a future that already has your name written softly into it. And it looks like someone who stays, not just when things are easy, but especially when they're not. Whatever the answer turns out to be for you, know this: you are not too much. You are not imagining your worth. And you deserve someone whose actions make your heart feel certain, not someone who leaves you constantly searching for proof. Trust the pattern, trust the evidence, and above all, trust yourself enough to walk away from anything that only ever gives you words and never gives you actions to match. You have spent enough nights asking whether you're worthy of clear, obvious love. You are, and the right person will never make you question it for long. And if it turns out after really watching that the signs simply aren't there, let that be its own kind of answer, and let yourself grieve it if you need to. It's okay to feel disappointed. It's okay to want it to have gone differently. But clarity, even painful clarity, is a form of freedom because it releases you from a loop that was never going to resolve itself in your favor. You will not be stuck here forever. The version of you reading these signs today, learning to trust actions over words, is already becoming someone who won't be so easily confused the next time around. That growth doesn't disappear, no matter how this particular story ends. And if the signs are there, if you've recognized him in some of these stories, in the remembered detail, the nervous pause, the quiet inclusion in his future, the way he shows up when things are hard, then let yourself feel what that means, without immediately trying to talk yourself out of it. You've spent long enough doubting the good things when they show up. Let this be the moment you finally let the evidence in. If this video helped you see things a little more clearly today, do me a favor and hit that subscribe button, because we're building a place here where you never have to guess about love again. Give this video a like if even one of these 5 signs hit close to home for you. And before you go, I want to hear from you in the comments. Which one of these 5 signs made you think of someone specific in your life right now? Tell me below. I read every single comment, and your story might just be exactly what someone else needs to read today.